fellow St. Lucians, this is Open Mic, and we are back today with, on my right is Dr. King, leading pathologist in St. Lucia, and on my left is Mr. Lucius Doxery. He's a community leader in the Marshall area. We are going to focus on a number of items today, but we're going to focus on the remand situation in St. Lucia and the court system. Unfortunately, Mr. Andy George, who is the president of the Bar Association, should have been here today with Dr. King, but unfortunately, due to health reasons, he has not been able to be with us, which is rather unfortunate. But we wish him all the best, and we're going to start our show at this time. Dr. King, I start with you. I watched your show on the hot button issue. I think it was last week, and I was quite impressed with some of the information you provided. What worried me most was the word remand. Remand, in the view of many, has become a very questionable term, because remand was apparently created to buy time for the lawmakers, but not to be abused. Can't the Bar Association find some way to limit this indictment? These are three very important questions that will take some time to discuss. So, Dr. King, having had the opportunity to discuss this matter at length with a professional lawyer like Mr. Andy George, maybe he can throw some light on what I have just mentioned, which is the word remand, what can be done about it, and is there some way that the Bar Association could address it? Dr. King.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Well, you are right. Remand is a term used to define a person who is being held while the authorities gather investigation, finish up all their investigation, get their prosecution in order to give the person their time in court. But I mean, for us in St. Lucia, the issue about remand is that there are people that are being held in prison, and they're being held waiting trial, and they're being held, in our view, for an inordinate period of time. And of course, one has to appreciate that in our Constitution, as is really, one would call it the civilized way of approaching people, if you have not had your day in court, and you have not had an opportunity to protect yourself and defend yourself, and you haven't had an opportunity for the court system to find you guilty or not guilty, you are innocent. Our law, our Constitution is clear. We are innocent until a court has
proven us guilty,
determined that we are guilty.
Correct.
So therefore, what this means, what remand means in our situation, is that we are holding innocent people, by law, innocent people in Borderley. And what we need to do, we think it's a human rights issue, it's a constitutional issue, and it's a political issue, and probably far more importantly, maybe, people might argue this one, but it's a financial issue, it's an economic issue. Because to house people on remand for an ordinate period of time costs the country money. It denies them their rights to a trial in a reasonable time, which is a constitutional point of view. From a human rights point of view, one will appreciate that holding somebody against in that way is actually against, it's a violation of human rights, the International Human Rights Declaration, UN Declaration, and of course political, because the St. Lucia Labour Party from 1997, when it
assumed office,
when it produced its manifesto and assumed office, has always said that it wanted to address the situation with the prisons. It wanted to have prisons to be correctional, hence we built the Borderley Correctional Facility to rehabilitate people. In the last manifesto, the campaign promises were that there would be electronic braces, we would reduce the remand population. So that politically, the signal to the people has been that the government, the present government, will address the remand situation. What we are saying from Remand Justice, and with the lawyers who are on board, such as Andy George, as you mentioned, is that it is time. We think we must stop talking about it now, and we must do it. Because while we are talking, there are real people being held for real time and costing us real money, and we are denying real rights to these people. And this is not a tenable situation. We speak about a broken justice system, and that is what it's appearing to be in front of us. And in this broken windows theory that I was talking about the other day, Michael, the broken windows theory, when our institutions are broken, it actually reverberates throughout the whole society, and everything begins to fall apart. We become a more careless people because we don't care for people as we should. And it is time to act. That's our point. And we intend to insist that it happen.
Yeah. You know, Steve, just last week, I paid a visit to Bordelais, and I had a tour of the facility. And I noticed, number one, the carpentry room. I went through that very carefully, and also where they do the clothing, the tailoring section. And they are very competent people, inmates, who do the work. I saw the quality of work being done. But what I'm learning is that the monies received are not reinvested into those areas. Consequently, the tailoring department, most of the machines look very run down, and one should take into consideration that where Bordelais is located, they have a strong sea blast, so there's a rust factor. And the same thing applies also to the carpentry. I saw the quality of work the guys were making, and they could do a lot more, because remember, between the remand people and those that have been sentenced, you're talking of over 600 persons.
That's right.
Right. Now, that is a big workforce, assuming that all of them are not capable of doing it, but a good portion of them are, because they have the time to think about it, and they are taught by others. And I was saddened to learn that the funding for these things does not return to the institutions. And more than that, these prisoners, these inmates, could actually be doing far more work, because, you know, there are a number of areas in St. Lucia that are crying out for assistance. For example, I went and I visited at the back of the Castries market a couple of weeks ago. I was appalled at the state of the place. I mean, when you talk of 100, 200 vendors who are not step workers, they are not a burden on society. These are people working for a living, and they have about all these broken down old trays, and they're operating against the elements, which is the rain and the sun. To me, it's a crying shame, because this area could easily be covered, and the people at the Bordelais could actually fabricate 200 to 300 nice trays, paint them and get some merchants to supply some paint, which we do willingly, paint the stuff up and present those things to the people. And because if it's clean, then you'd get more tourists coming to the market. And while I was there, I also visited the market, and I saw all the water coming down. And these are poor people trying to make a living. All the stuff is getting wet, and this has been going on for years. Now, these are different institutions, I know, but there we have institutions that can actually work together. That is the people at Bordelais, because it's the taxpayers keeping them. And as you rightly pointed out, when you take into consideration the people have to be fed 3 times a day.
That's right.
They have to be watched over by a staff of a premises. It is pretty close to $5 million annually from taxpayers' money.
That's right.
And you know, the big problem with all politicians today, that they don't listen. And people, we are all human beings, and we can in fact make a mistake, but we must learn from our mistakes. Because I said from early days, when we started getting all those lawbreakers from the United States who were qualified in lawbreaking, I told the Prime Minister that they should put an electronic bracelet on those guys, or a microchip or something, and to monitor those guys. So those people who are in Bordelais at the time here now, if you could even take away half or a little more than half and put an electronic bracelet and have them report to a police station twice weekly, look at the cost it would save. And additionally, when I went up to Bordelais, and I left there were 2 guys who were released that day, and they were just sitting on the side road, and I had to give them a ride down because they were penniless. They had nowhere to go. And this is something I've heard you talk and mention repeatedly. There should be some sort of a center whereby those people could be taken in and trained based on what they have learned there, and also people who want to repent for what they have done. You know, another area which I have focused upon, and we discussed it prior to this meeting here, is that there should be some sort of a vocational center that even at the Bordelais itself, for the people who have the potential, bring them in and make something out of their lives, and explain to them that there's another way of making a dollar. Plus the fact that you also mentioned a very important point, and that is, if they could do the tailoring and also the woodwork, some of them should get a percentage, so when they leave there, they have something in their pockets to start a new life, and not throw them to the wilds, because as the director says, a great percentage just come back a few days later because they can't find any work, nobody wants to employ them. So it's like a recurring decimal, which it's a disastrous situation.
That's right.
Now, we are living here in St. Lucia, and we must, and all of us must now stand up for the rights of people to make St. Lucia a better place and not allow it to go to the dogs.
I agree. And what I was going to say, and I'm going to answer your question in 2 ways. One, also the reason for addressing the justice system is justice is not just for those that we are housing in remand, it's for the victims of the crime, the people who have been hurt by people who have committed crime and have been arrested.
Correct.
They need their time in court as well to hear somebody, let the case be heard, and let the culprit be held properly accountable. And therefore also maybe whatever compensation can come their way. Even if it is compensation from an emotional point of view, to know that this person
satisfaction has been
so it's not just for the persons who are in Bordelais, it's for all the people who are victims of crime too. So that's one point. The next thing is we call it a Bordelais correctional facility, and that's what it is supposed to be. Right now, because of as you said, not enough of the people in Bordelais being able to go into training programs of various types, what Bordelais actually becomes is a university of crime. Because what it becomes, we put people together of all different types, people on remand who may or may not be guilty of a crime, with people who have been sentenced, which are penals, and they're discussing how to do crime, they're discussing how to network, when you go out, how you meet, who you meet. So it's more of a university of crime than it is a correctional facility. What we are supposed to be doing is making that a school where we house people. Because a lot of the guys who are coming in, I agree, they have not yet faced up to the reality that they need to change their life in terms of doing the hard work that is necessary to get a skill and make a legal living. And they must see that opportunity. And Bordelais, or the correction facility, is a time where you can find out what the person's skills are, you can put them into programs, you can train them, you can do the life skills with them, the psychotherapy with them. Because at the end of the day, what do we want? We want our sons and daughters to come out of Bordelais as better citizens, not as better criminals. So that is how it has to be. And that is important for all of us. And it is not just being soft on people in Bordelais, far from it. It is actually being hard on them and telling them, change your life. We've put you here to change your life. And so these workshops, carpentry, tailoring, even the baking, the agriculture program, the CSEC program to do CXCs, these are brilliant. But every single inmate in Bordelais must be involved in an appropriate program. An illiterate person, and there are many illiterate youth in Bordelais, must become literate. We must make sure that we give them the skills so that they can then negotiate life better. And as you mentioned, when we produce in those workshops, and we can sell those on the open market by contract or whatever, into schools, to courts, to wherever, to businesses. When we do that, and that money, a portion of that money goes to housing and a part of the person, and a portion of that money goes towards their bank account. So when they come out, they have capital where they could go and open their own business, or they could at least look after themselves till they could find somebody to employ them. Secondly, their children who are out there, they can actually make sure that they get access so that the children are maintained. All of them have children now, they're in Bordelais not working, and their children are out there suffering. their children can be maintained from the same monies that they earn. And in addition, you mentioned a halfway house facility where you come out and you are held and you can continue. It's a sheltered workshop maybe, or it's a vocational training, additional vocational training. I think that is so important. The reinsertion back into community when you've come out of Bordelais is very important. And that is something you're alluding to. And there are programs that do that, but we need to implement them.
This is Open Mic. We'll be right back. And when we return, I just want to mention one thing. Having been to Bordelais, just to reiterate what Dr. King was saying, just as a visitor, the mere fact of entering, the effect it had on me, just being there, was shocking. I will explain that.